Thanks, Tanvi. Coming up, African leaders discuss the continent's climate challenges. Niger's junta says talks are ongoing with West African neighbors, and Typhoon Haikui has made landfall in southeast China. But first, the headlines.
ASEAN leaders agree on not allowing Myanmar to chair the bloc in 2026. Current chair Indonesia says 5-point Myanmar peace plan to remain ASEAN's guideline.
Use this ASEAN-ship as an arena for cooperation to create prosperity, to create stability.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says latest income tax data shows wide-scale formalization of the Indian economy. World leaders root for enhanced climate financing in Africa's climate summit. US climate envoy John Kerry calls for a carbon market to fight climate change. And BCCI announces India's squad for ODI World Cup. KL Rahul, Ishan Kishan and Suryakumar Yadav find place in India's World Cup squad. So as the ASEAN summit unfolds in Jakarta, member countries have collectively affirmed their commitment to utilizing the peace plan as a guiding framework for addressing the situation in Myanmar. Additionally, ASEAN leaders have reached a significant decision to prevent Myanmar from assuming the chairmanship of the bloc in 2026. Instead, the Philippines will host the ASEAN summit in 2026, 1 year ahead of the originally scheduled time frame.
Kolektif ASEAN sebagai keluarga.
Regarding the implementation of the 5-point consensus, I would like to remind that the 5PC is an ASEAN's collective effort as family that has been agreed upon by the leaders of ASEAN in Jakarta on the 24th of April 2021, and the 5PC will remain as ASEAN's main guideline.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is expected to make a compelling case for a heightened response to North Korea's nuclear programs. President Yoon will stress that North Korea's weapons represent a significant existential threat to the region. He is scheduled to depart for the ASEAN summit on Tuesday, and later in the week he will head to India to participate in the G20 summit. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Jakarta to attend the 20th ASEAN Summit on September 6th and 7th. During his visit, Prime Minister Modi will also be attending the 18th East Asia Summit. The Indian Premier will be in Jakarta on the invitation of Indonesian President Joko Widodo.
Jakarta is hosting ASEAN, the most powerful political and economic group of Southeast Asian nations. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend both the 20th ASEAN-India Summit and the 18th East Asia Summit. The first East Asia Summit was held in 2005 with India as one of the founding members. As well as the 10 ASEAN countries, the organization also includes 8 partner countries including Australia, China, Japan, New Zealand, Korea, Russia and the United States. A key focus of the meetings this year will be freedom of navigation of the Indo-Pacific and better implementation of the rule of law. The ASEAN countries represent more than half of the world's population and 58% of its GDP. The shifting geopolitical situation and power balance in the region is impacting member nations' safety and security. Indonesia, the host nation, will be looking for consensus on key concerns including Beijing's claims over the South China Sea. The Indian Prime Minister will be accompanied by a high-level Indian delegation including Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar.
On to Africa now. As Africa climate talks enter the second day, billions of dollars have been pledged in clean energy investments aimed at showcasing the continent's potential as a green powerhouse. My colleague Julia Chapman is in London. She gives us more on this and other stories making it to the headlines across the world. Julia, over to you.
World leaders at Africa's climate summit say they are determined to bring in more global influence and far more financing and support to address the pressing problem of climate change and ensure a sustainable future for the African continent.
As Kenyan President William Ruto opened the continent's first climate summit, hundreds of millions of dollars were drawn in pledges for an initiative to boost Africa's carbon credit production.
Biggest contributor to debt distress in our continent is high interest rates. We pay 5 times more than others. The architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay.
Outside attendees to the summit include the US government's climate envoy, John Kerry, who spoke at the climate summit and highlighted that a carbon market is needed more than ever as a tool to fight climate change.
We think Africa can benefit and the global south can benefit only if the carbon market grows. It's got to grow.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also addressed the Africa Climate Summit 2023.
And it's time to break our addiction to fossil fuels and invest in a just and equitable transition. We need to see credible plans to exit coal by 2030 for OECD countries and by 2040 for the rest of the world.
Africa is experiencing a more rapid temperature increase compared to the global average, leading to severe climate and weather-related disasters. The continent was hit by 80 extreme weather and climate hazards in the last year itself. The most severe drought in the Horn of Africa and wildfire in Algeria led to 5,000 fatalities, exceeding an $8.5 billion in economic loss.
Africa, like many regions in the world, is warming faster. To give a number, so the actual rate of warming over the last decade is 0.3, which is higher than what we had before. And to give you another number, so in terms of the rate of warming of Africa, the number is 0.37. And if you remember, 2022 was the 5th warmest year on record, with a rate of warming around 1.15.
Former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon visited the Mukuru community in Nairobi to learn how the residents are helping alleviate climate change and are using the black soldier fly as a solution to waste menace. Organizers of the 3-day summit in Nairobi say they aim to showcase Africa as a destination for climate investment rather than a victim of floods, drought and famine.
Niger's junta-appointed Prime Minister Mahamane Lamine Zain said talks with the West African bloc ECOWAS are ongoing, adding that he expects French troops in the country to withdraw soon. The country's airspace has also been reopened by Niger's military leaders to all commercial flights after being shut in the wake of the coup last month. Typhoon Haikui has made landfall in southeast China. Thousands of people have been evacuated from at-risk areas as the typhoon rolled in with a maximum wind speed of 20 meters per second. The meteorological department continued a red alert for rainstorms as the country's 11th typhoon of the year caused severe waterlogging in low-lying areas. Schools in several cities were closed. Authorities say Haikui was downgraded to a tropical storm after losing strength when it made landfall on mainland China. That's it from me here in London. Back to you in New Delhi.
Thank you, Julia. My colleague Julia Chapman joining us from our London bureau. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Second edition of Global FinTech Fest underway in Mumbai to generate $15 to $20 million for FinTech ventures. And Turkey's annual inflation rate climbs to nearly 60% in August. All that and more on the other side.
always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman addressed the inaugural session of the ongoing Global FinTech Fest, which is being held in India's business capital Mumbai from Tuesday. The Finance Minister highlighted the need for building a responsible financial ecosystem. The second edition of the event aims to generate $15 to $20 million for FinTech ventures.
Building a responsible financial ecosystem is important. It has to be, therefore, going back to the title, it has to be, therefore, inclusive, it has to be resilient, and it has to be sustainable. The challenges are we are aware of the challenges, they are before us. We know the various kinds of threats which are active even as we talk, and therefore, how are we going to be able to build it?
Addressing the Global FinTech Fest, the Indian Finance Minister also highlighted that the number of demat accounts have increased by 2.5 times in a span of around 4 years. She said that there has been a record jump in the registration of mutual funds and systematic investment plans.
In a span of about 4 years, the number of demat accounts has increased by 2.5 times. From 4.1 crore in 2019-20 to 10 crores in 22-23. A record number of mutual funds, SIPs, are being registered, which again helps in generating long-term wealth, and with a monthly flow in the mutual fund industry through the route, reaching all-time high of 15,245 crores in July 2023.
So as the Indian capital gears up for the upcoming G20 summit this weekend, India's Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Anurag Singh Thakur, took stock of the situation at the venue and the International Media Centre there. Preparations are on in full swing for the G20 summit to be held this weekend. The minister spoke to DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh.
We are at the International Media Centre of G20 that India is hosting. I have with me Union Information and Broadcasting Minister, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur. Welcome to DD India, sir. It's the biggest gathering of world leaders and international media. What can you tell us about the preparations?
We are very excited to host the G20 Leaders Summit. And so far, if you look at the arrangements and the meetings held in India, in more than 60 cities, 200 such meetings happened. And the response was overwhelming. Nobody held meetings like this on that scale so far. And I'm hopeful that with the Leaders Summit, we're going to make history in a way. Because if you look at the preparations and the facilities here, these are world-class facilities. If you look at the International Media Center, which you could see on my background, and the dining hall next door and the other facilities, it showcased the new India, the power of new India. And with the same thing, if you look at the walls, you could look at the art, culture, heritage, and the digital themes which has been portrayed, and also the names, the way it has been given from here, from Ganga, Godavari, Yamuna, Mahanadi, Brahmaputra to other rivers, the areas are named accordingly.
Thousands of delegates, media persons who are gathering from all over the world. Any message of welcome that you would like to give out?
We're waiting for them. Enjoy the rich culture, tradition, heritage, and the cuisines of India. At the same time, the best of the best facilities with the Wi-Fi to the other such facilities available here, desktop to others. So they don't need to be bothered about anything. Everything has been taken care. But if you look at the Doordarshan is playing a very, very important role. More than 78 UHD and 4K cameras are installed in various locations, from Rajghat to airport to the Bharat Mandapam to the International Media Center, which is going to help them to give them the clean feed by the Doordarshan, and globally that can be transmitted to each and every country.
Indian Minister of State for Electronics and IT, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, addressed the G20 Digital Economy Ministers Meet on Tuesday, where he highlighted issues of technology and the ongoing growth and expansion of digital economy.
The Indian presidency of the G20 has been something we've experienced for the past several months and is an ongoing, culminating in the leaders meet in a few days. And there have been many, many discussions by nations of the G20 and beyond during this presidency of India's. And I certainly want to share with you and brief you on one area that the G20 presidency of India has certainly spent a lot of time talking about and gaining wide acceptance, which is the issue of technology and the ongoing growth and expansion of the digital economy. Over the several rounds of digital economy ministers' meetings, there has been extreme awareness building and consensus around the three topics that shaped or that were in the agenda of the digital economy ministers' meetings. The first one being the digital public infrastructure. Second, cyber security in the digital economy. And the third, digital skills.
Delhi Police says that traffic restrictions for the upcoming G20 summit will start from the 8th of September. There will be restrictions on commercial vehicles. However, vehicles carrying essential goods will be allowed. DD India's correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya gets us more.
G20 is about to kickstart in the national capital and a lot of excitement is there on that. And if you want to know where exactly you can go, what are the restrictions that you need to follow, I give you the Additional Commissioner of Police, Delhi.
As you all know, the G20 is going to happen in Delhi. G20 countries, and other than that, almost 9-10 invited countries and 14 international organizations. They are going to participate. They are going to be here in Delhi in different places. There will be lot of movements on 8th, the day before the actual summit. So 8th, 9th, 10th, there will be a traffic restriction. Also on 11th, because there will be a lot of departures, return movements to airport. So overall, the traffic restriction will start from 8th. Some restriction from 7th and 8th night, 12 o'clock. Some restriction from the morning 5 hours, 5 o'clock on 8th. So the very important, the non-destined vehicles. So far, so many vehicles which are going to pass through Delhi to one state to another state. There is no need of any stopping at Delhi. Now, this vehicle will not be non-destined vehicle. This vehicle will not be allowed to enter into Delhi from the border. They will be straight away diverted from the border to the east-west corridor expressway. But other the commercial, the essential commodities carrying the commercial vehicles, for example, vegetables, fruits, medicines, other essential groceries, they definitely will be allowed to enter into the Delhi. Even in the New Delhi area also, which is the main area, which is going to be declared as a controlled zone, because a lot of movements and the main summit also going to happen in the NDMC, that New Delhi area, that we declared as control zone. So there will be a traffic restriction in this area. But however, the bona fide residents and authorized vehicle, they can definitely move.
So for instance, if somebody is going from, let's say, from Noida or from East Delhi side to Gurgaon, so if they have to, and their personal vehicle, will they be allowed in that way?
There won't be any restriction for them because they are residing beyond the ring road. So they will take ring road and go to the Gurgaon. There won't be any issue. The only issue is that NH48, that is the main route. Well, other than NH48, they can use the other route, Meroli route also they can follow to go to the Gurgaon.
So the Indian capital, New Delhi, has undergone a makeover to welcome leaders from around the world for the upcoming G20 summit. DD India's Dibendu Mondal gives us more.
India is ready to host the G20 summit. The city is going through a makeover. The city lawns manicured, gardens laid out to welcome the delegates. From fountains to stone sculptures, Indian pride lined up along the streets. Bharat Mandapam, the main summit venue, is an example of India's infrastructural marvel. The city walls are painted with murals depicting the Indian culture, from Indian traditional dance sequences to Indian mythological characters adorn the walls of Delhi. India is ready, waiting to lay out the red carpet for its guest with the theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future. It will showcase to the world its cultural and economic prowess.
The infrastructural development and beautification will not only stay back with the visiting delegates, it will remain with this city and its citizens forever. This is Dibendu Mondal from New Delhi for DD India.
Under India's presidency, a G20 disaster risk reduction working group has been formed for the first time. Its aim is to address natural disasters impacting the world and help mitigate the destruction to property and loss of life. DD India's Palak Sharma reports.
From floods to fires to tornadoes, mankind is battling Mother Nature like never before. Climate change is hitting hard. The fires in Hawaii, the deadliest in America for decades. Weather disasters are now a top priority for the G20 and this year's president, India. It has established a working group to reduce the risk of disasters. India's focus is to come together with other countries, implement policies and manage the aftermath.
India has been able to find a place on the agenda for this entire theme, this entire domain, which so far, as you are aware, was not meeting sufficient attention of the world. Hopefully an inclusion of some of the aspects of this in the final G20 communique which goes out will send a message to the rest of the world. And with that, we hope to create a more resilient world towards disaster.
The disaster working group is looking at early warning systems like the one set up after the deadliest tsunami in history. 250,000 people died in 2004, most caught by surprise when waves flooded coastlines. It is also looking at buildings that can withstand earthquakes. In the Syria-Turkey earthquake in February this year, thousands died and 4 million buildings were affected. The G20 group is also aiming to provide more money for areas with a high risk of natural disasters to help prevent them and to rebuild after they've hit.
As you know, in the 15th Finance Commission recommendations, India is one of the very few countries in the world after the 15th Finance Commission that has got predictable financing for entire spectrum of disaster risk reduction needs, not just for response, but also for recovery and reconstruction and risk reduction. We've put in $6 billion for risk reduction alone, in addition to response.
The G20 will also hear from CDRI, a group focused on disasters, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. The G20 nations already have one thing in common: climate change. Rising temperatures driving many of this year's fires and floods. India is also warning of the economic cost of disasters. The Global South's development is damaged just as much as its buildings when disasters strike. Natural disasters are impacting individual countries across the globe, but they also threaten our collective future. This new working group clearly demonstrates India's commitment as president to Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. Palak Sharma in New Delhi for DD India.
Still with India, on the occasion of Teachers' Day, Indian President Draupadi Murmu conferred the National Teachers Award in the national capital. At a ceremony held at New Delhi's Vigyan Bhavan, President Draupadi Murmu presented awards to 75 teachers from across the country. The awardees were chosen by 3 separate independent national juries of eminent persons constituted by Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. On to some business news now. Turkey's annual inflation rate climbed to 58.94% in August, the highest since December 2022. Figures from the Turkish Statistical Institute showed that the consumer price index in August saw a rise of 11.11% from the previous month. The unexpected inflation rate led the Turkish currency to fall 0.27% against the US dollar, depreciating about 30%. Malaysia is considering regulations to make internet giants Google and Meta compensate news outlets for sourced content. The proposed regulations will be similar to rules in Australia, which made it compulsory for Google and Meta to compensate media outlets for content that generates clicks and advertising dollars. It said that the rules were part of government efforts to address fair compensation for news content creators. Next, we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Tensions flared in Buenos Aires on Monday as Argentinians protested against Victoria Villarruel, the vice presidential candidate of far-right leader Javier Milei. They accused Milei's coalition, La Libertad Avanza, of downplaying the nation's past dictatorship atrocities. Around 30,000 people are believed to have disappeared during the brutal 1976 to 1983 dictatorship period. In Bolivia, officials destroyed a cocaine lab capable of producing 400 to 500 kilograms of cocaine monthly. The lab was located in the central Andean region. According to the Deputy Minister of the Bolivian Social Defense and Controlled Substances, this bust will cause an economic blow of $800,000 to the drug trafficking industry. On Monday, hundreds of Chileans gathered outside Santiago's La Moneda presidential palace to remember the 1970 inauguration of Salvador Allende, a former leftist Chilean president who was overthrown by a military coup in 1973. On the 50th anniversary of the coup, participants emphasized the human rights abuses under the dictatorship and called for justice for the victims and accountability for those responsible. On to sporting action now. The Board of Cricket Control in India has announced the Indian squad for the ICC ODI Cricket World Cup. KL Rahul, Ishan Kishan and Suryakumar Yadav have been added in India's World Cup 2023 squad, whereas the likes of Sanju Samson, Yuzvendra Chahal and Ravichandran Ashwin failed to make the cut. Rohit Sharma will captain the team and Hardik Pandya will be the vice-captain. The tournament will get underway on October the 5th in a clash between champions England and runners-up New Zealand at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. So the squad includes Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, Virat Kohli, Shreyas Iyer, Ishan Kishan, KL Rahul, Hardik Pandya, Suryakumar Yadav, Ravindra Jadeja, Akshar Patel, Shardul Thakur, Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Shami, Mohammad Siraj and Kuldeep Yadav. So with that, it's a wrap in DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at DD India Live. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.